Hey guys, and welcome to the ACT Writing Overview video. So in this video, we're going to cover what's on the test and also what the scoring is like. So the ACT writing section is pretty simple and straightforward in terms of what's on it, because there's only actually one thing. So you're going to have 30 minutes to write one essay. And it's going to be a persuasive essay specifically. The topic is always going to be something kind of real life. And most of the time it has to do with real life school related situations. So a pretty normal topic would be something along the lines of School A is deciding to make students wear a dress code. And it'll tell you that supporters think that the dress code will eliminate issues between classes, aka students who can't afford trendy jeans don't have to worry about people knowing that because they'll be wearing, the school-issued khakis. And on the other side, you have people arguing that it strips students of their individuality, and that it's hard for students to express themselves fully if they're not allowed to wear clothing that they like. So it'll always give you two ideas that are pretty much opposing, and then it'll ask you to either support the pro, the con, or make up your own opinion on the topic. So I like to call them pro, con, and combo, because your own opinion on the topic is always going to be some sort of combination of the two that they already gave you, or it can be something, a third option that's not mentioned at all, but it needs to be very specific, and also it needs to be relevant to the essay itself. So as long as it's dealing with the same kind of issue, then it's completely fine. So for instance, in the school uniforms example that I gave, pro would be yes, the school should have school uniforms, and you'd explain why. Con would be that the school should not make people wear school uniforms, and then why. And your own opinion can be pretty much anything as long as it's relevant. But for instance, you could argue that the school should not make students wear school uniforms, but there should be a dress code. AKA, no bare midriffs, no t-shirts that have swearing on them, that sort of thing. Pretty much everyone's school has some sort of dress code policy in terms of that. So you could argue that, or you could say you should have school uniforms, but every Friday there should be a free day so that students get some chance to express themselves in clothing. So there's lots of different things that you could argue, as long as it's related to school uniforms and why or why not they should be implemented at a certain school. Okay, so now that you have a little bit of an idea of what you're going to do, and we will go over this in much more detail in the next video, let's look at scoring. So your essay is going to be scored by 2 readers between 0 and 6 points. And that comes out to a total of 0 to 12 points. So you won't actually see your score from either reader, but you will see the total score that they give you. So for instance, if you do get a perfect score, you know that both readers gave you a 6. If you got, let's see, a 7, for instance, well, that would mean that one reader gave you a 3 and one reader gave you a 4. So speaking of when readers disagree, readers cannot disagree by more than 1 point on your score. So for instance, the example I just gave of giving a 3 and giving a 4, that's fine, because there can be a little bit of discrepancy, aka your essay is right in between a 3 and a 4. But you can never get a 3 and a 5, or a 2 and a 4, because once they are disagreeing by more than 1 point, something's wrong. Now, in the event that that does happen, your essay is then given to a master grader. So your original 2 scores are completely forgotten, and a master grader sits down and gives your essay a score of between 0 and 12 points. The great thing about this is the reason for the master grader is to protect you guys. So you will never run into a situation where you end up getting a lower score than you deserve because one of your readers is having a particularly bad day. So, the first way they fix that obviously is by hiring people who aren't going to just arbitrarily punish you for them having a bad day. But occasionally, very occasionally, things happen. So if you do happen to have one grader who gives you a score lower than what you really deserve, the master grader will always step in and they'll fix the problem. So you don't have to worry about getting a grader who's not, doing the best job on the planet. So your grade is always going to be fair. So whatever you get on the actual test, it's a fair grade because it's based on either two people's opinions who have been doing this for quite some time, or one person who is a master grader and aka has read so many of these essays and really understands what a 0, a 1, a 2, etc. feels like. Okay, so notice I just said feels like, which seems a little bit interesting when you're looking at scoring. The idea behind that is that they don't go through and write down every little mistake that you have, tally them up, and then subtract those mistakes from, let's say, 100%. And they don't grade it like that at all. And a lot of times that is how English essays are graded, aka, you have an MLA error and that equates to 1 percentage point off your total grade. Not here. So here it's what we call holistic scoring. So what that means is that your grader is going to go through and they'll read your entire essay. They won't go back unless there's something really confusing that they need to reread. And then after they're done reading your essay, they will think about it for a minute and they'll be able to say, you know what, this is a 4 or this is a 3. And they've read it so many times, it's not your essay, but they've read essays so many times and they know the rubric by heart so that, they really don't have to sit there and kind of stare at the rubric and try to figure it out. And from grading tons of essays myself, this really does work out. You get a very good sense after reading enough essays of what is a 2, what is a 3, what is a 4, etc. Now, when they're reading, they're looking for 3 things: prompt, support and organization, and language. And their rubric actually is broken up into 3 sections, and those are the headings of the 3 sections. So under prompt, there's a couple things they're looking for. First is that you understood the prompt. Second is that you're using good critical thinking skills. If you get a 6, they describe them as insightful critical thinking skills. A 5 is strong, etc. Then the last thing is that you maintain focus on the prompt. So you could completely understand the prompt, blow them out of the park with your amazing thesis and intro paragraph, but then if you kind of lose your way and forget about what you're supposed to be writing about, that's kind of going to give you a little bit of mixed reviews in the prompt area. So as long as you can know what you're talking about and you maintain focus on that and describe it really well, then you're doing a great job in prompt. Next thing is support and organization. So support and organization, that encompasses things like, did you use transitions between paragraphs or within, each paragraph? Did you present your ideas logically? Did you organize your ideas well? Did you use examples that are relevant and specific and well developed? And finally, do you structure your essay well? AKA, do you have an intro? Do you have a conclusion? Do you make paragraph breaks? All of that kind of stuff. Now, the last thing, this is more the kind of grammar and vocab issues section. So this is more where you're going to proofread to fix any of these errors. So you want to make sure that you have a good use of language, you have a good vocabulary, you use nice varied words, varied sentence structure. You don't start every sentence with I, for instance. And basically that you don't have any errors that are going to seriously detract from your point. So a way that I like to think about it is that you don't have any trouble in terms of having mistakes. You can have some, it's okay. They're not really a problem unless they happen all the time Or when your reader is reading, they have to stop and go back a sentence and reread to try to understand what it is that you were trying to get at. So even a perfect essay, and I'm reading this straight from the rubric, can have few, if any, errors. So you can have a couple, it's okay. But you have no errors that distract from clarity or readability. So if, as a reader, I have to go back and reread parts of your essay, that's a problem. But the, occasional random spelling error or the occasional grammar problem, it's really not that bad. It's why holistic scoring is great, because they're not going to take, an eagle eye to everything you're doing and cross out each, problem you have and correct it on your paper. So they're not going to do that. So you can have a couple mistakes. And trust me, they understand that you only have 30 minutes. You're probably pretty stressed at this point, and you're high school students. So you need to write a good essay, but it doesn't have to be a perfect essay to get a perfect score. Okay, so next is how not to get a 0. We will talk in depth in the next video on how to get a 6 or how to write a really good essay. But in terms of scoring, we need to get a couple things out of the way in terms of how not to get a 0 first things first. So there's only really 3 rules to not getting a 0. There's only 3 things that they will give you a 0 for. So if we can avoid those 3 pretty simple basic things, then we won't have to worry about getting a 0. So the first one is they will give you a 0 if you write in anything other than a pencil. And P.S., no mechanical pencils allowed on the test. That's something that will probably show up a couple times in the videos just because I want to make sure you remember that. So how not to get a 0 is use a pencil. So use a pencil, don't use a pen. When you're practicing on your own, please try to use pencils as well, because correcting is a lot different if you have a pen versus a pencil. And also, it's nice to get in the habit of using a pencil, because it feels a little bit different, and I know some people just hate using them, so you need to get used to it. And also prevent you from doing things like when you write in a pen, sometimes you can drag your finger along the page, but on a pencil that smudges everything. So it's little simple things, but it'll help. The next thing is you can get a 0 if you're totally off topic. So what that means is stay on topic. So let's use the example I was using earlier of the school uniforms. So an on-topic essay could talk about the fact, or at least we're going to say it's a fact, that using school uniforms is a way of suppressing individuality. So by having students wear school uniforms, those students aren't able to really express themselves fully through their wardrobe. So an on-topic essay could completely use individuality as an example, but an off-topic essay could just talk about individuality. So individuality without mentioning school uniforms really has nothing to do with our topic. So that's the one way in which students can write good essays that are off topic. It's when you don't use keywords. So whatever the main idea of the essay is, you're going to make sure that you mention that often enough that we know that's the main idea of your essay in addition to the prompt. So stay on topic and you won't get a 0. And then the last thing, they'll give you a 0 if you don't write anything. So write something. They also could give you a 0 if you write like 1 or 2 sentences. But the main idea to avoid this one is stay calm and realize that, after 5 minutes you have to start writing. So just think about, what does this prompt mean, and what does it mean to me, or what would it mean to my school, and write something. And if you write something and it's on topic and you use a pencil, you're not going to get a 0. Okay, so the last thing we're going to go ahead and cover is where you would find your score when you get your scores back. So a lot of times I'll have students ask me, where's my writing score? because it actually has nothing to do with your overall composite score. So when someone says, I got a 36 on the ACT, they actually could have gotten a 0 on the writing section. Now that makes it seem like the writing section doesn't matter at all, but it does. It does actually matter, because instead of being part of that overall composite score, it has its own separate score. So you'll see your composite score, you'll see your per section scores, percentiles, all of that good stuff, but you'll also see your combined English writing score. And your combined English writing score, it's really easy to find. It's just the English score that you get, so that's 0 to 36, plus your writing score. So overall, you can get anywhere from a 0 to 48 on that. So this is the one time in which 36 is not the ceiling. So you could get a 48, for instance, if you got a perfect English, 36, plus a perfect writing, 12. So you won't see the writing score as part of your overall composite score, but it does have its own separate English writing score, and that is important. Okay, so in our next video, we'll go ahead and go over the strategies and how to kind of maximize your time and figure out how to come up with good examples. So great job, everybody, and I will see you in the next video.